Hi, everybody. Um, Glad to be joining you again. I'm Lloyd Spencer, and we have Mohammed Khalil from CarbonMeta Technologies. And I think it was about 2 months ago. Is that right, Mohammed? We spoke with everybody about.
Yes.
Yep. And I'm also really happy to introduce you to Mark Duiker. If you look in the press releases, Mark is the person who helps us bring the press releases forward, but also he is the person who will pick up emails and voicemails from the investors. So we're going to bring some of the questions that you've brought forth, and Mark's going to bring those to Mohammed and myself so we can answer them and hopefully do a good job of giving all of you an update as to where we are. So, and I'll be predominantly talking about what's going on with the carbon nanotube work with the plastic catalysis. And Mohammed, he's been out there what now for about 3 months, I think it is, in the Middle East.
Yes.
So you've been busily working on that, as we both have been working on the project with Silt Energy Development Corporation. So, Mark, why don't you start with the first question that you've had?
Yes, sure. Well, thank you for the introduction, Lloyd, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
Well, the first question, question that we've been receiving from several investors.
Yep.
They all say that they're very excited about the carbon nanotubes, and
Right.
they actually know where we are at the moment in terms of testing, in terms of
Yep.
bringing it up to commercial scale. What can you tell us about this?
Yep. Yep. So on the first pilot that we did, it was primarily, I'll call it a feasibility of does it produce the carbon nanotubes? Does it produce the carbon? Does it produce hydrogen? And the answer was yes. The next step beyond that was to begin to scale it up a little bit so we can start looking at larger quantities. So this last project, we took a combination of plastics, and this is a small amount, but we started with hundreds of grams of material to begin working with, and that also gave us a chance to work on scaling up the catalyst development. And it also gave me a chance to really take a deeper look at the catalyst development process so I can now start looking at how do you scale this up into the, uh, you know, not just the tens of grams, but in the tens of kilograms, or even beyond that. We start looking at the ton level. How do you do that? So I'm happy to say that we got some very good results. So we now know that about for if you take you know 100 kilograms of plastic, you're going to get about 25% of that back as the carbon. So here's in a very small sample in this case, but here's the carbon that we have, and it is a combination uh, of iron carbide as well as some carbon nanotubes, possibly some graphene and things like that. So we did verify that we got the percentages pretty well understood now, which is good. This week also, the week coming up, we're also working with the University of Washington to do the analysis of the carbon we're getting out of that. So we're looking at just how much iron carbide we're getting, how much of the other carbon products out there are there, and we're using Raman spectroscopy to look at what is the carbon we're getting out of that. We're going to use not scanning, but we're using transmission electron microscopy to look at what is also there as far as the carbon nanotubes. And I will also say there was one other part of the process that has been something that was not there in the original work with Oxford, but what we're building on top of that, and that is the separated. So when you look at separation, you have to find a way to separate it by maybe density or separate it by size. And so that's the work we're doing during the past probably 3 weeks, and we're going to continue doing that over the next, I'd say, month. Um, so that's exactly about where we are right now, is on estimating what it is we can get out of that and looking at the value of that. One last thing I'll add about that is that one of the people we're working with in the background is helping me to assess the market value of the components we're getting out of that. So we're looking at the iron carbide. We're looking at the carbon nanotubes we can get out of this. What is the relative value of that? So that as we scale this up, we can have some expectations on the financial benefits. So I expect that a lot of that work will be done to help us kind of understand the scalability side of it, probably over the next 2 to 3 months. In so doing, I'll be out in Chicago. We'll have our folks over at University of Washington do the analysis. We also have some folks even internationally who are helping us to really look at how we can scale this up. So that was a long answer to a rather short question. Yeah.
No, very good, very good. And in terms of potential off-takers, have you already
Yeah.
begun early conversations with people who may be interested in the product?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's, in fact, on the overall business model, we have been approached by one company, we'll call it on the sourcing side for plastic. So a lot of the questions often come to me is, how easy is it to find plastic? And while we can all know that there's a lot of plastic out there, the question is, how would one get a large amount of plastic? And we have one customer already, I'll call it potential customer, because we haven't solidified things. And we're looking at well over 20 tons per month, which they would like to pretty much give us. So now we're looking at, okay, we have more than enough supply. I'm working with our Chicago team on how we can process tons per day, right? Which means I then have to look at the amount of catalyst that it's going to take to process this tons per day. And the key question you ask is, and who are the buyers for that? And we're finding that the buyers are many. In the steel industry, we have already found interest in the iron carbide. We also know that for the very fine material, and some of it is extremely fine, in fact. And in fact, if you look at this is some of the separation we've done in this test tube here, the really fine stuff up above is of a very low density. And so that is going to be some of the carbon that is in that. The lower, the parts in the bottom end are more of the iron carbide that's there. So it is predominantly iron carbide, but there's definitely carbon in the rest of it.
Very good. Yeah, so this is actually an interesting question from an investor.
Yep.
It's about the North Carolina plant.
Yeah, you bet.
How far are we with this? Is it still on the table?
Yeah, so we engaged with the Joint School of Nanosciences and Nanoengineering. And in fact, we put together a plan for how we want to work with them. So that's still on the table for sure. In the meantime, I've been working with University of Washington to do the lab analysis because it's right nearby, and we have a working relationship with them. But I will be definitely going back to the JSNN to be working with them on with a lab. That being said, we already have some lab access now that we can work with over at University of Washington to do some testing there. I'm also looking at another lab locally that we could be doing work as well. So it's going to be a combination of both. But the expertise that the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering has is quite remarkable, and we want to take advantage of that. And even as we're producing these carbon products, we know that battery manufacturers that are getting established in North Carolina, that's where we want to be as well. So yeah, stay tuned on that. It's taking a little longer for us to realize what I was expecting from that relationship, but for sure we will be pursuing that.
Okay. Mohammed, yeah, this is more of a question I think you could best answer with your expertise. So Earthcrete, we've recently announced a $6 million deal. including for Earthcrete products. But we've also talked about street furniture in the past. At least that's what we've shown on Twitter and on social media. So can you give us a bit more insights on the details behind the deal? And are we also going to do something with the street furniture in the future?
Sure. We're starting with the street furniture. Well, basically, we were asked by our partners in Saudi is, okay, now you've done the pilot on the blocks, it was successful. What about given the amount of waste there is? What about applying it in different applications? So talking to our partners in Saudi, we thought about let's do street furniture because there's a need, especially for the new huge development happening in Saudi. So we partnered with a local manufacturing company in Saudi who's known for their supply for those giga projects in Saudi, and we tested Earthcrete on some of the modules I've already delivered as earth furniture, which was successful. And now we do have obviously an update on our agreement in Saudi. And part of the agreement, we're going to have a line just for street furniture coming up. And that's basically where we're at when it comes to street furniture. We have a bigger plan for street furniture, starting from Saudi, but going globally. But for the time being, I'll just say that a few samples are going to some of the clients in Saudi to test them, to prove them, and then we're gonna have a pipeline coming up by the third quarter of this year.
Yep.
And in terms of other opportunities, Mohammed, I mean, we have been active in Saudi Arabia for quite a while now. If I'm correct, you are still in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I'm still been here for 3 months plus.
Long time.
What we've done is, I mean, obviously we had an agreement with a partner, CERC, and then we had the pilot. But after the pilot, we had a product in hand. So I spent so much time going and talking to project managers, consultants in Saudi, and especially those who are working on the key projects in Saudi, well known, the likes of NEOMs and others, to introduce our Earthcrete, which was well received, I must say, and it took a while, took longer than expected, but because of the huge project and distance, was well received. So what we've done so far, there is an announcement coming up, obviously, about where we stand with Earthcrete. Our engagement with our partners in Saudi is a positive one, and from that announcement, from that engagement, we will directly go and start producing Earthcrete for key clients along with our partners. That is coming up hopefully in a month or two. And on top of that, we are being approached by other partners to mix our Earthcrete with other waste that they have. These are legacy waste they have in the kingdom and owned by government entities as to how they can mitigate the risk of the waste that they have if we mix it with Earthcrete. That is going to happen. A pilot is going to run in a month's time or so.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. Definitely. Thank you. I did see some questions also about, and that goes also for you, Lloyd, with regards to this, about technical details of the products that we have and the products that we are willing to introduce in the market. So it's a bit of a question for the two of you. When can we share a bit more information with investors? Well, non-sensitive information, that is.
So as in, for example, the technical specifications of like Earthcrete and that sort of thing. And I would say with the carbon products, we'll be sharing technical specifications on that for sure. On Earthcrete itself, that is a bit of a trade secret, so we're going to be keeping that under wraps, I would say. Is that right, Mohammed?
That's true. However, soon we'll be sharing especially when we introduce the product to key clients in Saudi, starting from Saudi, and also the project that we have
Yep.
in the US, we'll be sharing data sheets. Obviously, we have data sheet, and we'll share those.
Yep, and that's going to be the same for the carbon products as well as Earthcrete. There's going to be specifications for them. And some of those have already, in the case with Earthcrete, some of that's already been shared with project managers, for example.
Okay.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
Yep. In the case of the carbon, go ahead.
And that's basically how we got our approval, if you remember.
Yep.
We got our approval in Saudi to meet the standards because of the data sheet and the local testing that was done. Obviously, those were all done by third party.
Yeah, exactly. And in the case of the carbon products, we're definitely going to be sharing specs on that as we get them purified and cleaned up, and then get the details back from University of Washington, and then after that we go ahead and we publish it just like any other product out there.
Okay, very good. So information is coming up.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, Lloyd. So this one is for you. I noticed some concern in the market. With regards to a potential reverse split.
Yep.
But also about the recently added shares to the outstanding shares outstanding.
Exactly.
Is it what can you tell us about this?
Yeah. So in the case with the S1, there were some investors that brought in, including myself, that brought in cash, and so either between the shares that were added for some, as you'll read in the S1 itself, there were some shares issued for each of the folks that actually brought in some funds. As well, there have been some conversions. So that we have some folks who wanted to, get some of the shares sold, a little bit early on. So that has been that's been ongoing. We'll also see from time to time, we will have an agreement with somebody where they're doing some services for us, or there may even be some things related in the future related to maybe some kind of investments or related to even a joint venture. So we're going to be very, I'll call it selective and, measured, I guess it would be, about issuing shares like that. I think a lot of people have memories, as do I, of working with some of the legacy lenders in the past, where the terms of those notes were not as optimal as they could have been. And so those have been pretty much, nobody's been knocking on my door saying, gee, let's hurry, let's go. To the contrary, I've had some folks saying, can we work out some kind of a deal to, get the convertible notes retired at some kind of an agreed upon discount. So I've been working on that. That's what I've been working on. So if the worry out there is, we're just going to see, forever, issuing of shares, that is not going to happen the way it did in the past. So that has stopped. Especially when I signed that agreement with Yorkville Advisors back in 2021. That was, I would call it, the largest risk, and I put that risk to bed, which helped a lot. So we won't expect to see that. But as it relates to a reverse split, I am waiting until we get things a little bit settled out. For example, we're expecting a couple of investments coming in, strategic investments, not just single investor type things, into joint ventures. So we want to get those dealt with. We also want to bring in the first revenues, of which the Stilt Energy development project. I want to get those first revenues in the door. I want to see how all of that works first, and then I'll take a determination as to what we want to do. We all would like to see this price higher, without a doubt. I've been pretty pleased with the overall volume for the most part, but I'd like to see all these first come to fruition, and then I can take a a measured decision on what the right thing to do is. But I think the worry that people might have, which is if we do a reverse split, does that mean we're going to see lots and lots of shares being issued? And the answer is no, that's not going to happen. So will we see some shares issued? Yes, because there'll be some agreements, some services that are done for restricted shares, or a joint venture where we want to issue shares to those who are investing in the joint ventures. That we expect to see as well, but it won't be like it won't be something that will cause unlimited issuance of shares.
Okay. Thank you for addressing. Yeah, so I made a collection of questions that I should almost say FAQs.
Sure.
We get a lot of questions through the investor relations, but also on our social media platforms.
Yes.
Which we try to answer individually, but also through through this means. So thank you for answering. Thank you for addressing. Is there anything else you would like to share?
And I guess I'd especially like to share the patience that the investors have had with us. It's been a long and torturous 2.5 years, something like that, 2.25 years, 2.5 years, of bringing this company back, and the investors have really helped me to bring the company back to current. We will, after the 10K is filed, we'll have that out. I'm really looking forward to these first revenues because that will help everybody all across the board. And I think we can help reward the investors for their patience. That is exactly my desire and my objective.
Perfect.
And I especially want to also thank you, Mark, for bringing forth these questions and the investors themselves. So I encourage the investor community to bring those questions to you. So if they send it over to an investor at carbonmetatech.com or they leave a voicemail, it really does get to Mark. And then Mark can consolidate.
It does.
and then he can press us to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And I hope the next review we should not wait 2 months before we share the update.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, more frequency because I enjoy this. I mean, hearing from our investors, and if we can share an update, why not?
Exactly. All right. So it's a date 1 month from now. Mark's going to hold our feet to the fire, and we'll be back.
Perfect.
And I'm sure we'll have positive news by then.
Yeah. All right. All right, gents. Until next time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Mark.
See you then.
Say bye.